So, on to today's session. I'm Harry Bliss, first of all, and I've seen loads of familiar names and faces already popping up, but there's some names that I don't know, and it's amazing to meet you all on this morning. So today's session is all about mindfulness and really why Google, the likes of Nike and Apple implement mindfulness within their organizations. And I think it's fair to say they're high-performing organizations, first of all. And they're organizations that do lead the way often. Now, our organizations might not be the likes of Google or Nike. I know we have got someone from one of these organizations signed up today, though. But we can learn the lessons from what these high-performing organizations are doing to being able to optimize their teams and creating workplaces that work for everyone. They work for the business and they work for our people. Now, the first place that I wanted to start was around some of the famous people that I was researching that do mindfulness. It was quite incredible looking at it. The likes of Steve Jobs in the past utilized mindfulness for his creativity. You've then got the likes of LeBron James or Lady Gaga, for example, utilizing mindfulness for their own creativity, for their performance in their respective area. And all of these people utilize mindfulness to be able to enhance their relationships. First of all, we know that mindfulness can reduce conflicts, not just in the workplace, but at home. It can enhance relationships, but also, and something I'm going to pick Dr. San's brain on today, is around the neuroscience around mindfulness. And actually you can grow your brain quite literally. So it's called neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells, just by practicing mindfulness on a daily basis. We're also going to debunk some of the mindful myths. We're going to really define what mindfulness actually is. We're also going to share with you how you can implement it. And that's where Laura is really going to come into it with all of the workplace health expertise that she possesses as well, on how we can actually implement it into our daily infrastructure within our workplace and how we can overcome many of the challenges that we may have and may be facing at the moment. So first of all, just wanted to share a little bit about Sans. So Sans is our new head of mindfulness and is a leading neuroscientist, worked at a world-leading university and then discovered mindfulness, has had a lot of training within that respective area, and I'll get Sans to do a brief introduction to herself in a moment's time. Sans is a really key part of the Champion platform, so all of the mindfulness content, I'm going to share a little bit more with you around what that looks like and how you can access it after today's session. But Sans is leading on all of that, so you're going to get to meet and get to know the person behind all of our mindfulness content. Now, joining Sans as well today is myself. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Champion Health, for those that don't know me, and it's amazing to see you all. And then we're also joined by Laura Dallas, who has a background in tech and wellbeing, so perfect for Champion Health, and is our head of product as well. And we'll talk all things through how you can implement mindfulness within your organization. So first of all, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to start with yourself, Sans, if that's okay. And would you just be able to provide a little bit more of an in-depth intro as to how you got into mindfulness, the importance of it as well, and just your background? That would be fantastic for our audience this morning.
Sure. Thanks, Harry. Oh, lovely to meet everyone. And I've just seen some of my friends from Lincoln, so I'm going to give them a special wave to Kerry Loomis, a lovely lady. So I got into mindfulness through experiencing a tough time in a very busy job. And that busy job was leading up a research group at Edinburgh University, wonderful organisation, and I had a great team of people. As a junior scientist, I was promoted quite early on in my career, which was amazing to have that experience and opportunity. But with that came a whole host of new management responsibilities, big budgets, lots of decision making, lots of things to start up. And I did all of those things really successfully because I wanted to succeed, and I'm a driven individual. But with that came this sort of, my brain just kept working really hard for me. I didn't really rest. I didn't know how to look after my brain and my body and my mind. And the do list was very, very long. I think that's enough of a flavor of what that feels like. And I bet you'll be able to connect with some of those experiences.
I think so many people find that as much as anything, Sans, and especially when we were talking to people before today's session, there's just so much going on. So I'm sure many people will resonate. Will you just be able to, for our audience, just explain a bit about mindfulness in itself and what is mindfulness? Because I think there are many misconceptions out there, aren't there?
Yeah, what is mindfulness? It's not just colouring in, yeah, it's not just chilling out. Mindfulness is a real life skill. It's awareness of what's happening around you, the stuff that you see, you hear, the people's faces that you pass by in your workplace. That's one part of awareness. And then it's awareness, a deep knowing of what's happening inside you, what thoughts you're thinking, how you're feeling, how your body's feeling. Like mine right now, my heart's a wee bit fast because I'm a wee bit nervous, So I notice that, and that's what's happening right now. So mindfulness is simply know different levels what's happening right now as it's happening, but paying attention in a non-judgmental way, being curious, being kind in our observation.
Amazing. I was just seeing Yvonne as well mentioned she completed an MBSR course many years ago, and so that's mindfulness-based stress reduction, and that's one of the main piece of research that's coming out at the moment. We're going to talk about the research, we're going to talk about the benefits shortly, but what we thought would be really useful for you as an audience today, and as much as anything useful for me, because there's so many things going on, so many competing priorities, is to actually do a little bit of mindfulness at the start of today's session, and Sans is going to lead us through it. And so you can go through what it actually feels like, looks like for those that aren't as Yvonne, is trained as Yvonne in MBSR. And we can just start to feel things and notice things. And also you're more likely to remember much more from this session after completing mindfulness as well. We're also going to bookend the session with a mindfulness session as well. And so you can have a really successful day ahead, whether that's your evening with your family or whether that's the rest of your working day. So Sans, are you all right to just do a quick 2-3 minute mindfulness session as well? I'm going to turn off my camera so I can practice it properly. And yeah, I'll pass over to you for now.
Okay, cool. So we don't need any fancy conditions. You don't need to be in a studio. You can be in your car. You can be anywhere. So wherever you are, we're just going to press pause on the doing of the moment. So maybe just sit with your shoulders, give them a wee roll, drop them down, relax them. Place at your hands a place to rest. Round about you. What's really around you? Are you in your home office? What colours do you see? The weather like outside if you've got an external view. In this place of quiet and not having to do anything, to notice other stuff happening on the inside. And you feel your body breathing. Chest rising and lifting. Those in the chest area. Around the nose and the nostrils, or even your tummy moving forward and back. So just get a wee bit nosy, become curious. Where do you feel your breath? Notice if it's fast or slow. And fall. Really just becoming aware, if it's possible, about how we're feeling right now, what mood or mind state. Energized. Notice how you're feeling. Perhaps. And lastly, just notice the texture of your mind. What thoughts are there? Almost like looking at inside weather in the mind. There's thoughts about the future, what's to be done next. Or if there's stories or memories about something that's happened a moment ago. Or if your mind is just present, listening, focusing. And then wrapping that up with, well, what do we need to do? Are we going to have to refocus our attention as we start our session and hear other voices? And can we do that with kindness, ready to rejoin Laura, Harry, and
Thank you, Sans. And Tom did mention just the sound was just dipping in and out slightly, so so apologies for that. But I already feel more relaxed. Already, you can probably tell it from my voice. Thank you, Kerry, as well. And we'll look to get people's thoughts on it. One of the amazing things about the Champion platform is it's not reliant upon all of the Wi-Fi connections, and so I start my day all the time with one of Sans's mindfulness sessions, and you can imagine with the high production audio quality with it, it's just the best way to start the day alongside a bowl of bran flakes for me. So thank you, Sans, that was great to be able to just experience a little bit. And there are so many different forms of mindfulness, aren't there, that we can deliver within here. And so Alison said, nice to take time to relax, completely agree, especially within our busy lives. And Samantha said, brilliant, so effective. So already people can feel the benefits. And what was that, 3 minutes, I think, in the end?
3 minutes,
long,
yeah.
Which is absolutely incredible. So I've got so many questions for you, Sans, in a moment, but I'm going to go to Laura, just for you to introduce yourself, Laura, briefly, and just talk about how mindfulness has helped you, first of all, and how it can help other people.
Yeah, definitely. So lovely to meet everyone. For those who haven't seen me before, I'm the head of product, and I've worked very closely with Dr. Sans. So it's been an absolute privilege to create the scope and the breadth of the mindfulness exercises that we have. Gosh, where do I even begin? Mindfulness has really transformed not only how I feel in my life, but also how I work as well. It's so integral now to my day-to-day tasks. And almost for me, what it's become is that internal radar, so that early warning system that Sans kind of goes on about, that actually when, just as we have done then, we take that moment to pause, settle, notice what's going on in our minds, how our body is feeling, it then can direct me better to fulfill my needs, if it were. So for example, if I'm sat at my desk and I've got a lot to do, and then I notice that my shoulders are tight, and actually maybe I just need to have a bit of a relax, maybe go on a short walk, try to re-energize myself. If I notice that my brain is feeling a bit foggy, my thoughts are a bit foggy, then actually what do I need in this moment to help me perform better, to get my work done, to get in the groove of everything that I need to do. So for me, it's really become that early warning system that helps that self-reflection, and just connecting it to the workplace. And of course, we've name dropped those organizations, the like of Google and Apple, that actually what that self-awareness can do is actually improve your emotional intelligence. So that is naturally going to help with relationships in the workplace. So if you understand and have an awareness of how you're feeling, if you're feeling quite stressed out or you're annoyed about something, maybe in another situation you would be a bit short with a colleague, or kind of have a difficult conversation. Whereas if you're aware of how that stress and irritation might manifest in that conversation, you can choose to do something different, and that of course will only improve the way that we work. So yeah, it's been a real eye-opener working with Sans and how she views mindfulness, because I'm sure as she'll kind of talk, that it's not that airy-fairy picture that we all that we all kind of perhaps immediately think of. It's rooted in brain science, and the more you practice it, the more you're the better you get at it, but then actually the more your brain develops and you can fall into those patterns more naturally, and it all just becomes easier.
And something, when I've spoken to yourself, Sans, you refer to the brain as a muscle, and just like going to the gym, the more we exercise to a certain level, the better for us, the stronger our muscles get, the more adaptable they are, flexible they are, all of those great things. It's the same with mindfulness. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. So I'm glad to hear these words, the brain, the mind, and the body. They are our most precious instruments. We need them to work well at work in order for us to be our best, right? And in order to maintain them, we need to exercise them. And the mind and the brain are no different. And that's what mindfulness helps us with. It's kind of this little phrase, maintain your brain, you know, mm-hmm. And that's what mindfulness does. That little pause gives us an opportunity to recharge the brain's battery. You know, I can see it in the comments. Yes, 3 minutes is all it takes regularly. So there's different types of mindfulness exercises that will exercise different parts of our mind, our hearts, and our bodies to help us work well. And the more we practice them, they'll strengthen that muscle through changing the structure of your brain for the good. Yeah.
That's one thing I wanted to go on to. And Laura, you mentioned EQ, and I've made a mental note myself on talking through emotional intelligence and how mindfulness can help us with the cognitive functioning and being emotionally intelligent in the workplace and beyond. But just physiologically, Sans, are you all right to just go into a little bit of depth around the things such as the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the areas of the brain that can have a stress reduction and help us with rational thinking as well? Because that was something that really helped me be able to get my head around mindfulness and just quite simply the power of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try and make it concise because it's such a big topic. So we have this amazing brain, our most precious instrument, but it's not designed for us to be productive at work. It's not designed for us to be happy. It's designed for us to be alive as humans and keep us safe from danger. Yeah. So we have this teensy wee pea-sized bit of our brain at the back of our brain called the amygdala. So that's our alarm bell. It's always looking for trouble in real life. Now that can be serious danger like being hit by a car, but it's also triggered by plenty of workplace challenges, how we interpret an email, how a colleague looks at us, or even the staggering depth of our to-do list. So when the amygdala is awakened and is ringing, and it might start as a small little ring, it triggers our stress response. And that will make us react in one of 3 ways. We'll fight, we'll freeze, or we'll run away, the fight, flight, freeze response. So as Laura's example, if that, you know, I feel frustrated, my amygdala is working, and then I might shout at a colleague or send a snippy email. That's not me being my best self. That's not aligned with my values as a leader, as a collaborator. It's my brain. But when we practice mindfulness, we develop a different muscle, a different part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. Yeah. We practice noticing more of those early warning signs of stress, anxiety, worry, the ruminating brain that goes to the future and makes stuff up that's not even happened, but our bodies will feel it as stress and reactivity. So when we can practice mindfulness, it helps us grow this awareness. When we're growing and strengthening this part of the brain, we can see earlier, aha, the amygdala's just making me want to go. Ugh. But now that I've seen it, I can use my other superpower of mindfulness, my breath. I can take a pause. I don't need to do anything. I can feel anger. I can feel impatience, but I'm going to pause. And through using our breath, we can turn down the effects of the amygdala. We can turn up the effects of a kinder version of us. So I think these are the sort of neuroscientific stories, the truthfulness of mindfulness behind the scenes. And of course, I bet you can see the benefits of not reacting, but learning to respond and pausing, and then using our breath to reduce the physical stress in our bodies, huh?
It's quite
Sorry, Harry, I was just going to say, I love on the platform how you talk about the breath as your superpower, because it really can have that impact in modulating that physical response. So reducing the parasympathetic pathway, calming things down, whether it's the box breathing out for longer than you breathe in. There's all these different techniques it's just your breath.
Your breath.
Your breath. We breathe all the time.
One of the things that I find really interesting, though, is I went to a mindfulness session, live mindfulness session recently, and I mentioned it to a friend of mine, about 30 years old, male, fairly stereotypical in some ways. And he was saying, why are you paying someone to teach you to breathe? I learned when I was 1 day old. And so how would you answer that, Sans, first of all? Because I found it very difficult. That, of course, I know how to breathe, but I know within my working day, I'm breathing faster than I normally should. That's having a huge effect on my nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system that Laura mentioned. How would you get that message across to someone that might not be as engaged in a topic like this?
Yeah, just thinking about that. And actually, we were breathing before we were 1 day old, weren't we? We were breathing in the womb, so we're already experts. But the breath does so much. Yeah, it keeps us alive. But it's through stress and habitual conditions, our posture, we don't breathe to our fullest potential. I noticed I was a bit like that there. That's one of my stress signatures. So I'll just open up my chest. Yeah, I can relax a bit. So when we learn to breathe better, it actually fine-tunes, as you've all said, and I can see it in the comments, it fine-tunes our nervous system. Our nervous system's like the ultra broadband of managing our brain and our mind and our body. And the magic simply is knowing how to breathe differently. So we can, as Laura said, we can do box breathing, which is where we make the length of the in and the out breath the same and consistently that. You know, it's magic. There's a little nerve in our belly that gets switched on when we breathe in these ways. And it runs all the way up to the amygdala and talks to other parts of the brain. And it says, you don't need to be active just now. And when I breathe in this box breathing way, breathing in for 3 or 4, out for 3 or 4, in for 3 or 4, out for 3 or 4, press repeat. You're sending a signal from your body using the broadband of the nervous system up to your brain to say you don't need to worry anymore. The brain hears this as you're safe. This is difficult, but you're okay. And that starts to play down the stress response. And as Laura says, you can elongate it and really start to relax your body as well.
And it's almost biohacking in a way, and hacking the biology, and especially the modern way of working, where we've got so many things, so many conversations, so many things to do on a to-do list. And it is a way of us just calming ourselves down. So we're not built to be at a desk or even to be packaging things up in a manufacturing store, for example. And so we do need to learn new ways of being able to adapt to be able to benefit ourselves. Laura, one thing I mentioned to my friend as well was, why not just give it a go? And so how do we encourage people to just get started? Because again, we've seen it in the comments, and I'm going to go to some of the comments in a moment's time. Yeah. We've seen it in the comments. So many people saw a benefit straight away, and I do from mindfulness. I feel so much better 3 minutes after. So how do we get people to that starting line, especially in the workplace?
Well, my favorite quote, I was going to say it earlier, but it's good to say it now, that actually those 2 minutes of that 1 minute of mindfulness that you do on a daily basis is far much better for you than the 60 minutes of mindfulness you never do. So that is exactly it. Small and often, and to actually practice, because as Sans, you said to me earlier, it's called mindfulness practice for a reason, that actually it is something that you need to do, build and build. So maybe it is just taking that pause, perhaps setting a reminder on your phone, a little mindful break, just a pause, feel your breath for a couple of moments, and then carry on with your day. And if you keep doing that, building the habit, then it will become more like second nature. For example, when you're going out on a walk, actually listen, notice what you can hear, what you can see, the colours, the people's faces, really kind of check in and find those little opportunities, because you don't need to be sat doing a formal mindfulness meditation to practice mindfulness. So that would be my biggest recommendation. But then there are the formal things that we can implement in our working days. I mean, obviously, having a platform where people can access these more formal mindful minutes, as we like to call them, is really helpful, because we know that there's skeptics out there. We know that some people really bought in, but having a platform where people can access it whenever they want to really will help to break down that barrier of not knowing where to start. And they can pick it up at any time, whether it's early in the morning. I think I just saw a comment there saying that someone always does it early in the morning when they're going for a jog, or maybe it's the last thing you do before you go to bed, or maybe it's during the work day. So on your lunch break. One of my favorite sessions that you do, Sands, is around hugging your mug. So the mindful tea break, and actually just experiencing something you do every day, having a cup of tea, having a cup of coffee in a completely different way is, it's really interesting. I'd recommend everybody on this call now to give it a go today at some point, and just notice what it feels like, what you see, the reflections, because it really transforms the way you see things.
Amazing. I can tell you're a Yorkshire person.
Sorry, Harry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I could tell Laura's a Yorkshire person through and through, talking about tea.
Tea, a cup of tea, it solves everything.
Fantastic.
Everybody should have a tea break.
So, but that's a really important point around taking a break, and it's almost a form of mindfulness in itself, being able to take that break. I just come back off holiday and I've not felt as good in ages, and in a way that is a form of mindfulness, and I didn't have to do mindfulness practice to be mindful and be in the present moment. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit more in a moment's time, Laura. I'm just going to go to Vicky's point first of all, so thank you for reaching out. There are notes in the session's recorded, so we'll send this through to you after today as well, so that will all be emailed through within 24 hours of today's session. And we're also going to email an exclusive session for you to be able to just sample one of Sands' sessions, and the way that we've recorded it, the way that we've done it. Laura and Sands have done a remarkable job, and from a selfish angle, it saved me loads of money on not having to pay for loads of other mindfulness platforms, and so you can tell I'm from Yorkshire as well. Tom's got a question as well, or a comment around a little bit of time throughout the day. Don't berate yourself if you don't hit a scheduled check-in. Absolutely love that. So it's the opposite of what we want to do, is beat ourselves up. We want to reward ourselves, show ourselves that self-love as well, and then it does become second nature and you slip into it naturally. It's impossible to be able to do it every single day. Life happens, things will get in the way, whether that's work or whether that's things in our family, for example. But if we can just get 1% better at doing it, there will be some times that we forget. Naturally, we will then build that habit all the time. So do look to break it down to manageable chunks.
Definitely. And I also think in terms of the workplace context is that sometimes it can be hard to motivate yourself. We know that we should be doing these things, but often we just don't get around to it. I think a really nice idea that I've known quite a few companies do is actually create kind of live drop-in sessions, so getting an expert in, or perhaps just a real champion of mindfulness in your team, to just put aside 10 to 15 minutes where you could all come together, whether that's remote through just a Zoom or a Teams link, or whether it's setting aside booking a meeting room, getting everyone together in the same room, just to take that collective breath, set your intentions for the day, and see what comes of it. It's worked really successfully in the clients that we've spoken to.
Yeah, and we've had so much amazing feedback from them around, as much as anything, sales. So it sounds funny me saying that, but the sales team are more empathetic, better listeners. Their intuition's better, they're more emotionally intelligent, and so it's been a really interesting arena in terms of sales, which in some organizations can be fairly cutthroat, and for many organizations, if not every organization in the private sector, they rely upon sales to be able to have a business. So it's a really interesting arena that the sales teams are looking at utilizing mindfulness, and they see an ROI that way as well. One thing I just wanted to mention in terms of the chat, if there are any questions, we would love to answer them, no matter how tricky they are, then please ping them through. If you want to just send it through to me and put anon at the end, I won't mention your name within there as well. But please ask any questions, whether it's about your own mindfulness practices and how you can embed it into your daily schedule, or whether that's the organisation and how we can support organisations going forwards as well. One thing I wanted to ask you, Laura, is off the back of the Champion platform, what we know from the data, and data is so important to be able to build a successful wellbeing strategy, is a lack of time is the top barrier for employees to engage with wellbeing activities. And I think that's something that doesn't come as a surprise for many of us, because we've got many competing demands inside and outside of the workplace. What can organisations do, and the senior leaders that are joining today's session, to be able to give the space and give the time to their team to practice something such as mindfulness?
Yeah. So actually, Sans and I were talking about this beforehand. It's about keeping the conversation going, but keeping the conversation going in a way that is easy to implement, those quick wins, because we are, I think this is the theme of the theme of the conversation. We are all very busy. We're all time poor. We have a very long to-do list. So it's thinking about how senior leadership, well, first, can the conversation get up to senior leadership level? Because often perhaps we'll be having these conversations in our teams, line management, on an individual level, but how can we then build that up to the leadership? Because that's going to have a real impact. If the top C-suite and leadership individuals are talking about mindfulness and the impacts that can have on performance and productivity, then that's going to be really helpful for engagement across the whole organization. But just super quick things. So we've got lots of tips and tricks on, like, for example, the box breathing that we've already mentioned, doing being mindful on your daily walk. Maybe these are bits of information that can be shared in email comms, in any weekly newsletter. So keeping that conversation of how mindfulness should be on the agenda at the top of the agenda to really help drive that performance. But for us, it's all about on the platform, it's short audios, it's getting people to set reminders on their phone, setting up those notifications and building that habit, which is really going to have that lasting impact.
Thank you, Laura. And I think it's something that is really set by the senior leadership team. Massively. We've seen it with a global law firm that we've gone live within over 40 countries, I think it is. And the CEO has mentioned that he's been using your session, Sans. So no need for imposter syndrome at all. But tens of thousands of people are listening to it every single day because of this individual that has said that he utilises it on a daily basis. And that's the social proof. And if we look at a lot of what we need that social proof. Are you going to add something else, Laura?
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, look how you started this session talking about the famous people, the celebrities who meditate, and it's thinking, oh, well, if Lady Gaga does it, then I can do it too. And, think about your own experience of when you said that. Imagine what impacts that will then have on your employees if it's coming from the leadership team.
Fantastic.
And I also think it fits in, just to add, I think a lot of the skills and attitudes that we grow and develop through practicing mindfulness will sit, we talked about this before we came on, will sit at the heart of organizational culture. They will sit in the psychology and the values base that many modern organizations want to have. So the real question is, why wouldn't you, when it can enhance how you operate from the top down, from the ground up, and laterally, because the benefits can ripple out. And so I think there's a real clear justification and motivation. And I think going backwards again, when you start to feel the benefits of these minutes of practice in your daily life, that's what motivates you to keep doing it. And you'll be more productive. So you'll save 5 minutes on that job. And that banks you 5 minutes of mindfulness in real time in your working day.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sans. So we've got loads of questions, some through the Q&A, some through the chat. I'm just going to mention Yvonne loved your engagement today as well. And I completely agree that, You can be a busy fool, as busyness doesn't always equate to productivity. We need to be looking at output as the main thing in terms of what we're able to achieve. So completely agree with that. And working hard doesn't always equate to working smart, and that's really important. And that's what mindfulness can help us do. I'm a big believer in working hard. It's helped us get to the stage that we have, but working smart is more important than that, as it's easy to slip into that busyness trap. We've also got a question from Lizzie. So this is for you, Sans. I'm going to direct this your way. Yeah. Is there a time of day to get the most benefits from a practice? Great question, Lizzie.
It's a brilliant question, and I love it. And I guess it's a yes and no, and it's a very bespoke answer. So I love a practice first thing in the morning. It's about setting my compass, my human compass. So I might just sit in my bed, actually, a few minutes after waking, and then ask that question: who do I want to be today? You know, how do I want to show up in my life as a mum, as a professional, as a mate to someone else? And if I was a bit of a less skillful human the day before, I'll ask that question: what do I need to pack in my kit bag? A wee bit more listening, a wee bit more kindness, a wee bit less speeded up. So morning is a great time, but that might not be your bag. It might be the hardest time of the day. So you don't want to kind of crucify yourself. We'll all be individuals. Find a time in the day that works for you. The key is making it a habit, because our brain learns and loves habits and repetition. So I think play with it, explore it. And body scans, half an hour late at night just don't work for me. There's another one.
Or do you sleep in 5 minutes?
Sleep therapy, that's different.
It just goes to show. So that's the bit that works for me, is the body scan piece later on in the day. At times I do find in the morning it's easier to build a routine because nothing can get in the way when you first woken up necessarily, whereas later in the day, but it's whatever works for you. So what I would encourage as well is, just like Sam said, just give it a go at lunchtime, give it a go in the evening, give it a go in the morning, see what works and see what you get most benefit from. And we've got a great question from Michael as well. So I do try mindfulness occasionally. I also like to do yoga, brackets badly, me too. I find this useful, particularly regarding breathing. Do both go hand in hand? Sans, I'm going to forward that to you again.
Yeah, lovely. And well done you for really looking after your mind and your body, a real ambassador and witness for us all. And I do yoga badly too, but I wiggle with intention. So yoga and mindfulness do go hand in hand. You could see yoga as a mindful movement practice. It's about really attuning to your body. And the mindfulness element of that is just attending, noticing what's happening in your body as you practice your yoga. Can you breathe and soften your muscles a wee bit, or are you a bit like this? And maybe you don't complete your class because actually you're better doing something else. So the two are very aligned and can be separate as well.
Amazing, thank you, and hopefully that was useful for you, Michael. And Hannah has asked another fascinating question. How would you suggest encouraging staff to engage in mindfulness activities at work who have ADHD and may not be able to dedicate their attention to a mindfulness practice? Sans and Laura would love to get your thoughts on that, and I've got a short response as well, just from a friend of mine that has ADHD that I'll share with you in a moment's time. But Sans, are you able to just give any thoughts that you've got around particularly employees that experience ADHD?
I think something is coming. I might not specifically answer, but something is coming around the broad range of activities. And remember, mindfulness isn't about zoning out. It's not about clearing your mind and just sitting still. Laura's already said, if we are having a cup of tea and that's all that we're doing, if we're doodling on a bit of paper, if we're using a fidget tool, as adults or young people alike, and that is what we're doing in the moment. And if our mind's attention is on that and we're aware of that and how we're feeling, that's mindfulness. That's a practice. So we don't need to be boxed in by mindfulness looks like this. If your individual really loves the freedom of movement, and it's making me smile, I just want to do that, loves the freedom of movement and music and dance, do that. And if your mind is present with that and you're aware of it, that's your mindfulness practice. So I think there is a lot of scope around people who are neurodivergent. And I think, again, it's a spectrum. And some people that will be easier than others to do a more traditional practice. But you can bring in lots of sensory objects as well to your practice and your experiences.
Thank you, Sans. And Laura, have you got any additional thoughts on that? Because I know there's a big area that we're looking at around neurodiversity at the moment, in particular ADHD.
Yeah, massively. I think Sans has kind of hit the nail on the head that we don't need to create the formal practice space for everybody. It's whatever works for you as an individual, whether, you know, independent of your individual needs. So I think another thing that it also made me think about, and perhaps this is slightly unrelated, but still within this kind of area, is that actually sometimes mindfulness is not the right thing for people. You know, whether you're experiencing trauma, or whether you have a particularly severe mental health problem, or whether actually it just doesn't work for you. It's not for you, and that is also okay. What the biggest message that I want to get across is that mindfulness is a tool. It can help people, but also it might not be for you, and that's okay. But what I would ask everyone is just to give it a go, and just see what happens, whether it's a formal practice or whether it's something more informal, like having a cup of tea, going for a walk, mindful colouring. I know you mentioned that at the beginning, Sans, but again, it's another facet, isn't it? It's another way that actually, if I'm being present in this moment, whatever it is you're doing. So for me, it's gardening. I love gardening, and I love being in the moment, feeling the soil, looking at the colours. It's, you know, that's what works for me. So yeah, a few things there that I think are related.
Absolutely, and for me, I can't stand gardening. I'm rubbish at it as well.
Exactly.
But as weird as it sounds, I love going to music gigs, and that's where I'm most present. So that's something that a lot of people would go, what, loud music? Went to see the Killers recently, really lucky to get tickets for them, and I just felt so much joy, and I felt in that present moment with thousands of other people. So for me, that was something that worked. But in terms of, I think, Laura, you've articulated that answer and Sans so well. With the ADHD, I have two friends that have ADHD, and I talk to them regularly around their experiences with it. And one person has given mindfulness a go. They've tried 3 different mindfulness teachers, and not everyone has such an amazing voice as Dr. Sans. We are absolutely blessed with a soft Scottish accent, but I encouraged them to try different teachers with different styles, and it really wasn't for him. It just did not work for him. And he's now utilizing other things, as Michael mentioned, such as yoga, for example, or he's going on a run, something that is a bit more active. That works really well in managing his ADHD. For someone else, my other friend, they didn't like mindfulness originally. They gave it a go with another instructor, and now they use it religiously, and it's something that they've really found beneficial to not just the workplace, but also outside of the workplace as well. And so I think it is just breaking it down, not getting them to do a 30-minute session to begin with, 1 or 2 minutes, give it a go. How's that made you feel? If they're feeling more agitated off the back of it, do you fancy giving another mindfulness session a go? Because it might be the instructor or the type of mindfulness. If that doesn't work, and then you can say, oh, there are other things that you can do around physical activity, for example, and other areas. Might be gardening, definitely not for me again, within there. But I think there's so much, hopefully, that you can take away from that, Anna. But I think Laura's point is so important, that it's just not putting the pressure on in terms of it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for them. There are things that work for Laura that she's mentioned that don't work for me, and vice versa as well. We've got an amazing comment as well from Alison, and I know Alison really well, and their organisation are doing some amazing things when it comes to wellbeing. So a true ambassador, and they have an in-house qualified practitioner of mindfulness. She's a colleague who takes time to share with her colleagues at roadshows. Looking within the workplace for someone within these skills is a tip I recommend, and keeps consistency for employees and breaks down the barriers to talk about mindfulness. That champion can be so powerful. Laura, I know you mentioned that previously, and especially with a new generation of people coming in with mental well-being skills, the training that they may have had, for example. I know, Yvonne, you mentioned you've got MBSR training, and I'm sure you utilize that within your organization as well. That's really powerful within companies. And I know we have some amazing people. We're quite blessed as a wellbeing company with the luxury of having people like Sans join us as well. So what I would love to do now is finally just talk about the lasting remarks, really, Sans, that you would share with people. A really short practice, and then what I'm going to do is just take you through a tiny bit of the champion platform and play 2 minutes of mindfulness to you. just from the Champion platform. So you can just get a sense of the high quality that may be able to support your team going forward. So Sans, if you just want to provide some lasting remarks, and we'll be able to wrap up at around 5:02 to give you an extra 5 minutes within your working day as well.
Yeah, so would you like me just to summarize the sort of my take on mindfulness, or would we like to try a little bit of feel your breath?
Let's do a little bit of both.
A little bit of both, yeah. So I think really speaking from my heart and my mind as a busy, juggling professional, I think I would encourage people to give mindfulness a go. Yeah, don't rule it out. Be curious, be investigative, try it out for yourself. Yeah, pick a good time of day where you feel alert and interested. But I have seen the benefits in my own life, not just in my personal life, but my productivity, my engagement with others. I've seen it in clients and I see it in the research. So I think it's really worth exploring as a helpful tool for modern and busy lives. So why don't we just see what it's like to pause without looking inwards, but just to see what it's like to be, not do, and feel a wee breath, one after the other. Shall we try 1 or 2 minutes of mindfulness? Yeah, thumbs up from Harry. Okay, and I'm closer to the mic. If my teammate Alex will just tell me whether you can't hear me, I'll try and have a stronger voice. Okay, so find a comfortable place to sit in your chair. See what it's like to open up your chest a wee bit. Notice if your shoulders are hunched forward. So just opening and rolling the shoulders and the chest back a wee bit. So that they're hunched up at your ears. See if you can drop them down. So we practice and on the spot, something called find, feel, focus, and follow. See what it's like to find your breath. It could be helpful to place a hand on your chest, one on your tummy. So rather than having to think hard, and you feel movement under your hand at your chest or in your tummy space. Feel the chest rising and the hand change in pressure. Can you feel any forward or backwards movement in the tummy? Finding and feeling. See what it's like to follow just one breath, one step at a time. So can you notice the start of your next in-breath? And feel the start of the next in-breath again. To that, can you follow it? Can you notice how it changes over into an out-breath? So find, feel, follow another in and out breath. Don't worry if your mind's lost track, you got bored or busy, that's fine, don't matter. Just start again. Let's feel our last in and out breath together. One more time and see what it's like to supercharge it with a smile that says, well done me for giving this a go. Breathing in Smile. Breathing out. Ooh, I wonder what that smile did for you. And let's join with the team, Laura, Harry, and Alex once more. Well done.
Thank you, Sans. And I did mean to say previously that just notice how you felt beforehand and how you feel after it as well.
Yeah.
And again, how long was that? 2 minutes or 3 minutes? It is quite incredible. Now, one thing I'd just love to do before we fully recap the session and we crack on with the rest of our day is just share a little bit about the Champion platform with you, because that's often one of the things off the back of these sessions that people say, I just want us to know a little bit more about the Champion session. The session was wonderful, got a really good grasp on mindfulness now, for example, but what can we now do about it? So I'm going to share my screen with you and just in the next 60 seconds take you through how we can embed mindfulness, and you can see the 50 famous people at the top of my top tab there. You can see how to embed mindfulness within your working day, for example, within here. So this is Ricky's platform, and this is the Netflix of wellbeing, the big statement we've aimed to build, whereby you've got all areas of wellbeing in one unified place. So you've got all of your workouts, so yoga for the likes of Michael, all the way through to nutrition plans within here, support and masterclasses on topics such as neurodiversity and ADHD, as we mentioned earlier, all the way through to women's health and the menopause, for instance. But the area that I really want to take you through to is the Mindfulness Hub. And this is where Sans has been absolutely impeccable in developing hundreds of mindfulness sessions at the click of a button, ranging from 6 minutes through to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you can see here. And many of the things stay away from the fluffy mindfulness stuff to stuff that we just want to do in terms of ditching autopilot or just ending your day better. All you need to do is click onto that and then press play. You can see the wonderful Sans there, and you've got a short interview to really meet Sans for those people that haven't been as fortunate as you to join today's session. Press play.
Welcome to A Few Mindful Minutes with me, Dr. Sans.
There she is.
And there she is. So that is how easy it all is. And you can then build into your daily practices mindfulness. If mindfulness isn't for one of your colleagues, then they've got workouts and they've got all of the rest of the Champion platform. Not only there for your team as well, we've just launched Friends and Family Access, whereby every single member of your team can share the benefits of Dr. Sans and the expertise that she has alongside our 60 other wellbeing professionals free of charge. So whether it's your mum, whether it's David or Danny, for example, and they're yet to register their accounts, so they'll be active in no time, they can start to use this platform free of charge. And that's one way that we're looking to extend our impact. So finally, I just wanted to say 2 or 3 massive thanks, actually. The first one is to Laura and to Sans. It's been absolutely amazing having you on today. The second one is to Alex. So you can see Alex from Champion. Alex puts in all of the hard yards behind the scenes. It is a huge amount of work to be able to develop these live sessions for hundreds of people, to be able to get the likes of Laura and Sans trained up as well. So thank you, Alex. The unsung hero within here. And the final thank you is thank you to you. We've had hundreds of people register for today's session on a topic that's so important that often is misunderstood. So hopefully you've increased your knowledge and you can take one thing away from today's session. Hopefully as well you feel nice and relaxed and focused for the rest of the working day. If you're in the UK, have a lovely lunch, and if you're elsewhere, have a great morning, afternoon or evening. And the final thing actually is I'd love to hear your feedback. I read every single piece, so any feedback you've got, the good, the bad and the ugly, what our next session could be, I would love to hear it as well. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Laura and Dr. Sans, and see you all on the next live session. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye then.